Hi, and welcome back to The Flow Show. I'm Joanna Turner, Intuitive Business Mentor. And today's episode, we are going to be talking about the shift in consciousness from 3D to 5D, also known as the shift into the age of Aquarius. So that's what we're going to be deep diving into today. And I'll give you a little update. I've actually tried to record this before, but it wasn't quite there. So this is my second attempt at recording this about a month later. So we'll see. Hopefully it's a little bit better. And I just want to give you a little update what's happening. We still have, the retreat is still available, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I've been seeing a sort of shift in the greater, we're going to be talking about the shift in greater consciousness, and there are some key themes that I have been seeing coming through. And so we'll get into that as we sort of go along with today. And I've also got Akashic Records for the podcast specifically open today. So we will see if there's anything else that wants to come through with the Akashic Records open for the podcast as a whole. So let's dive into it. You might already be in the spiritual or coaching community, and you might have heard about this shift from 3D to 5D. You might be well and truly over it. Some of the terms that I will use today are a little overused. Some of it has been a little saturated in a sense, but it's also still happening. We can't deny that the shift is happening. And I think if it's something you haven't heard about before, it's an important concept. And I kind of wanted to just get it into the podcast as one of my sort of foundational episodes. And then if anyone is ever confused, I can refer people back, or if they haven't heard about it. So that is the sort of idea behind it. And future episodes, I'm looking at doing one or several episodes on the law of, well, all the spiritual laws and what I call the anatomy of a quantum leap. So there are some exciting ones I've got in the works. And also I have two beautiful guest experts lined up over the next few weeks as well. One will be talking more about money, and I think we'll do a little theme on money for a little bit. We'll do a few episodes on that, and I have another wonderful planetary grid work lady coming on who has her own podcast all about sacred travel. So really excited and looking forward to that. We've just sort of connected over some of the themes that I've been sharing on this show, and she's been experiencing as well in her own life. And I just love when you just find those people that you resonate with at a really deep level, where I was just like, yes, we get it. We've come at it. I'd never heard of her, but listened to some of her episodes, and I was like, yes, you are on the same path. You get it. And that's something I really love, and being able to connect with people who are in this on a similar journey. And another wonderful thing, recently I've connected with a few more people locally, which has been really nice. And they're also doing Scottish planetary grid work, which is incredible. So I'm really enjoying those conversations and what they're opening up to as well. I have to admit, and I was sort of voice messaging one of these girls yesterday, and she runs a women's circle locally, and I said, like, I have actually just been really missing community, and I feel like my community is all over the world. It's in Australia, it's in the States, it's in Bali, it's my friends are all over the place, and but it's not in Scotland where I'm currently located. And I realised that that's actually something I had been craving since I came home. I felt it was a temporary thing. I intended it to be a temporary thing. And I didn't really make, apart from reconnecting with family, obviously I've been living abroad for 17 years. I'd seen them over that time, but reconnecting with my sister, my cousins, nieces, nephews, some of my old best pals from way back, and spending time with them and reconnecting, I hadn't been and obviously doing a little bit of dating as well, I hadn't been focused on a spiritual community, new friends that get it. A lot of my family and friends think I'm totally bonkers, which is also totally fine. But they're not. We're not having these conversations, right? So I feel like I have been getting my spiritual fix in these conversations from podcasts, Zoom calls, chatting on WhatsApp or whatever, but it's not quite the same sometimes as in person, which is one of the other reasons that I'm so looking forward to this retreat, is because we will be able to connect in person, and really magic happens when people come together, I believe. So that's really exciting. So yeah, hopefully in the next few weeks I will be reconnecting or connecting with people locally, which will be really nice. So I don't know if you guys are feeling that a little bit, about feeling a shift and wanting to widen your network. And I think as well, with what's happening in the world, there's a lot of uncertainty. It makes very good sense to have a local community. I know everybody around where I live, mainly because of the dog. She is known to drag me into people's driveways if they're in their garden or parking their car or whatever. I get dragged into for her to say hello to people. She just loves it, and a lot of those people have become regular friends and people we say hello to, or other dog walkers, or all the people locally. I actually had a beautiful conversation with a girl who lives around the corner, and that was actually a deeper conversation. So I was saying to somebody the other day, I was like, the one thing that does frustrate me is talking about the weather 10 times a day. And I think today I was actually, because I was kind of joking at 10 times, and then I thought, I wonder how many times it is. And I counted up today, and I think I've had at least 6 conversations today about the weather, which comes with the territory of walking a dog in the outdoors, in the park, craving something deeper than just passing the time of day about the weather, which is very nice, and connecting with people. But it was really lovely having a proper conversation with a girl around the corner. We got into faith and, God and Christianity, and I found out her partner is, or husband rather, is a minister. I had no idea. He's just like this nice young guy, and I was like, oh, I had no idea. So that was quite interesting. So just enjoying these deeper connections and meeting people in person. And I have another first date tonight, so we'll see how that goes. If it goes well, I will let you know. Anyway, onwards and upwards, and here's to meeting people in person, which is part of the theme really with what we're going to be talking about today. All right, the Age of Aquarius. So there is not really an official date that has been universally recognized for the beginning of the Age of Aquarius. There's been a lot of talk about it. I was sort of having a look to see if there was an agreed upon date, and there really isn't. Some people believe it was the end of the Mayan calendar in December 2012. Some people thought the world was going to end and it just marched forward. And I believe the theory behind that one is that the Mayan calendar relating to the Piscean age, which we've just been coming out of, ended. And in theory, so that world, that version of our world ended, but they were not taking into account that another one was beginning, which is Aquarius. So this theme is known as the precession of the equinoxes, and in astrological terms anyway, and the Earth rotates on its axis over, I think, 25,800 years, and within that there are different ages correlated to each zodiac sign, which last for about 2,000 years each. And for the last 2,000 years, we've been in Pisces. and now we are entering into Aquarius. So without thinking too much about even what either of those two things represent, obviously we'll get into that, you would imagine that if the world has been in one mode for 2,000 years and it is transitioning into another mode for 2,000 years, things would change. So that is what we are deeply experiencing right now. And actually, I had my sort of annual astrology reading with a wonderful guy this week as well. And he's just so spot on with everything. But he is also booked up a year in advance. So if you're asking me for his details, be prepared to wait at least a year if he's even taking on new people. So he's very busy, but he's very good. And I've often thought, I never booked. So this week I booked straight in for next July after my reading this time. So that's when he's available. Seems so strange opening your calendar in 2025 thinking, I suppose I'm free on Monday at 12 o'clock. I don't know. So yeah, we'll see. But that reading was really beautiful. I'm entering into a wonderful phase, which is really exciting. An 18-month transit, which is all about my feminine and my shift in relation to my feminine and how I relate to it and other women in my life as well. So maybe that's why I'm so looking for friends in women's circles. I'm looking to reconnect with women around me as well. So very nice time. And I don't go to astrology for like predictions, I suppose. I go to understand, and that's not really what he's about anyway. He's more about the themes that are going to be showing up in your life over the next year or two. And we talk about the themes and the patterns and the cycles and the types of things that may happen during that time. So I really like it because of that. So anyway, we digress as usual. But so this procession is coming, and there is change, and it doesn't take me telling you that things are changing, but we'll look a little bit deeper into what those are. But one of the other things he said was, I don't have my notes from that chat right in front of me, but I think my Pluto is in Uranus or something at the moment. I'm not an astrologer, so I'm not, totally sure about these things. But he said that one of the things I'm here to be doing at the moment is my Pluto is sort of, I don't like the word triggering, but it's sort of triggering change or help. I'm in a good phase to help people with transition and with change and with that sort of death and rebirth cycle. And I was like, wow, that is so interesting. That had really been a theme for me over the last few months. I've talked about it here on the podcast about this death and rebirth cycle, and feeling like after the equinox back in April that I had sort of risen from the ashes like the phoenix. Like I was feeling this lightness and a shift, and like I could breathe again. So that's a really beautiful thing if I've sort of gone through that cycle, if I'm sort of primed at the moment within my chart to be able to help people navigate that at the moment. That's a cool thing. I feel like that's what I've been doing anyway, but if it means it's extra potent at the moment and there's more people going through more things, then I'm all for it, right? I'm here for it. And when I look back, I realized that change and sort of going through major changes and sort of reinventing myself is something that I have become really quite adept at through many different reasons, but partly by moving countries, changing careers, getting rid of all of my belongings at different times, down to sort of having one big suitcase and a small one, and it's about changing these shifts that we're going to be experiencing in these transformational times. It's about a shift in identity and what we are attaching our identities to, whether that is for me, for a while, it was the physical possessions, and then I had to get rid of them all. So if you're going to look at me and if people that I met, how are they going to, we like to know what people have or what they've got to sort of put them in a box to try and figure out who they are or where they've come from. But if you have very little and somebody just shows up in front of you, you've really got to take them at their face value, right? At who they are presenting as in that moment, because you can't sort of attach them to things that they have or things that they are so much. But so many of us get so much from the identities and the roles that we ascribe to, such as a career. Are you a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a coach, a graphic designer? Who are you without that label or identity or career? For many years I was an accountant, and I got a bit out of it, I suppose. But I would say my parents got more out of that identity for me than I did. They liked to be able to tell people Joanna is a chartered accountant. They understood it. They got it. Other people understood it, got it. And they could feel like I was successful and have some sort of reflection from that, reflected back to them from friends or family or whatever. So my parents had quite a tough time when I let all that go. I remember my dad saying, "Don't you want to be the CEO of the company that you're working for?" And I was like, "No, I really don't." I didn't like the industry, the culture. It wasn't a healthy place to be. And when I used to look at my bosses and my boss's bosses, I was like, yeah, no, don't want that at all. Don't want that to be my future. That's not what not something that I aspire to be. Great for them, suited them better. They were thriving in those roles, but that wasn't necessarily for me. So we've got to look at, what are we attaching our identities to? Is it your home, right? That was a big one. I used to love, having this perfect home, or if I felt it was perfect and everything where it was, and took so much time and energy decorating it, and I just loved it. And then I had to let my home go within a month. So I had this thing, and I had my lovely car and all the bits and, all of that stuff. And I had to let all of that go within 1 month and land back in Scotland when my dad wasn't well. And that's a big identity shift. Who am I then? Once I got rid of all my belongings, then I got them all back again. And then I had to get rid of them all again. It was like this giant cosmic joke. I was like, oh man, who am I now? And so, yeah, we take on other identities, obviously, mothers, sisters, brothers, fathers, uncles. We have all these other identities. And who are you if you're not that? If you're not a wife, if you weren't a husband, if you weren't, volunteer coach at the weekend for the thing, right? How much are we giving over to those things, and sort of giving our power away to the identities that are reflected within those roles or those titles? And we sort of so often just go along with that archetypal role that we think we should be or we should operate as. But what if those things, God forbid, disappear? Right? It's a huge time of transformation. Obviously, divorces happen. Children leave home, right? Like, people, these are sort of normal times of transition that people can struggle with, have a really hard time with, as obviously it's not an easy thing, or if they lose their job. Just as one example, I had I'll just say a friend, and their sister was leaving Sydney and moving up to the Gold Coast in Australia. And in a matter of sort of a month, they had been let go from a job they'd had since they were like 18, a job they'd had for about 18 years. And were so invested in, so part of the company, like this was their one and only job. They felt like it was everything to them. And they had had a home and a life all built around that in Sydney. And then this person was let go from that job, utterly devastated, like just beyond, and had some sort of mental crack happen, like some sort of split, became depressive, paranoid, thought everyone was against her, like a total strip back of who she had been and who she was. And she had a couple of kids, and when they got up to the Gold Coast, she was actually hospitalised in a mental institution for months. So that was somebody you might think, oh, you've just lost your job, you've just moved house. But these things can cause major issues for people. And before that, she had no signs of any mental illness. So it was a big shock, obviously, to the family, to her husband, the kids, all of that stuff. So change is hard. Transitions are hard. And I believe when we are more prepared mentally, more spiritually connected, we have a bigger awareness perhaps of the cycles and how things work. Hopefully the big changes and the transitions that we are all going to go through, regardless of what we try to control or not change, will be easier with that higher understanding and with some tools to be able to cope with the stress and the change and that shift in identity. But let's not dismiss the gravity of how difficult transition times can be. But on the plus side, on a lighter note, if you transition through these things with some awareness, with some tools, giving yourself a whole ton of grace and a whole ton of compassion and move through it with help, with in a more conscious way, it can be potentially your greatest the greatest thing that ever happened. Now, I know that might sound a bit difficult, but the transition is going to happen anyway. Change is going to happen anyway. And if we can navigate it to the best of our ability, then hopefully on the other side, it will be fantastic, right? We can live into an even better, brighter, happier, new identity, and embrace the change, know that it's happening for us, not to us, and hopefully come out on top. So let's talk a little bit more about the 3D and the 5D. And so Pisces was not just 3D, but we'll sort of equate it more to the 3D consciousness. And it is what we have known, right? It is where we have come from. Most of us are still in 3D dense bodies. It is a denser, heavier place. And the sort of physicalness that we are used to in our realities. So 3D consciousness, or sort of where we have come from and how we have operated for the last couple of thousand years, has been based on a sense of duality. So that is right, wrong, yes, no, for and against, black and white thinking of things. I am right, you are wrong, and an inability to be able to see nuance and the shades of grey, shall we call it? Not the Christian grey shades of grey, but just the differences. Like everything is a scale, and we all land on these different scales for different things, and it's not necessarily one thing or the other. The other part, the 3D piece, has been very much about separation and very much an I focus. So I am okay very much a sort of more selfish thing, sort of based more on competition. It's a sort of struggle energy. If I have something, you don't. So if I'm winning, that means you're not winning, right? And so very much, if you look at somebody and you're jealous of what they have, because you feel if they have it, then you can't. Very much that sort of 3D thinking. Very, it can be quite hard, very fear-based. Often people feel quite victimized, quite powerless, sort of operating in the world is against me, nothing goes right, I can't catch a break. That kind of thinking, not feeling or knowing that they can have any impact on their life or their trajectory of their life, very much sort of firefighting, right? So dealing with whatever shows up in your space as it comes, you're sort of, you end up like not maybe getting very far or creating the change that you want because you're just dealing with the issues that are in front of you. The other thing that comes that we've talked about this a little bit is the ego and material possessions and the identity of self with those material possessions, who they are. I often talk about the sort of keeping up with the Joneses. Who's got a new car? Has your neighbour got a new car? Are they getting a new roof on? Like, what have they got going on? Oh, maybe I need that. Oh, they've been on holiday. We need to go on holiday. That kind of idea of things, right? Very much identified by what you have, right? You can still have nice things in the 5D, of course, right? It's not a bad shift that's happening, but less of an identification with those things. I remember a mentor of mine, he had made great money. He was in the coaching world, but he was very much in that ego material possession place, the 3D, more 3D consciousness. And he had a Rolex, and he was very much, loved his Rolex, thought he was the man with the Rolex. And I think he went to South America, did ayahuasca, and sort of had this like wake up and thought, oh, I think actually did his watch break in the ceremony? I'm trying to remember this story. I think his watch might have stopped or broken in the ceremony. And he took that as a sign that he was too attached and his ego and his identity was too rolled up in this Rolex. And he got home and he dropped it off at the Rolex dealer or whoever, the shop or whatever, to get it fixed. And he never went back for like a year or two to pick it up. And one of his friends, I think, said to him, hey, like, whatever happened to that Rolex, man? You never had it off your wrist for years. And he was like, oh, I dropped it off to get it fixed, never picked it up. And his friend was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I don't know if it was all about my ego and da-da-da. And his friend was like, okay, but still go and pick your watch up, man. And he went and picked the watch up and sort of decided that he was able to wear it again a couple of years later, but with a different energy attached to it. Like, he wasn't so attached to it and the story that, or the identity that it gave him. So it was interesting. During my travels, I used to wear this big like rose gold watch, and I think I left it in a hotel room or something. I was just like, this is too heavy. I've been like carting this around the world. This is just too heavy. And so whoever made the room up got a really nice big rose gold watch. I just was like, oh, I'm just leaving it. It's too much. So so when my mentor shared that story, I was like, oh, me too. I kind of got rid of the fancy watch as well. Anyway, so on that note, also, in the 3D consciousness, time is linear. You kind of needed a watch, right? We, in the sense that time passed in minutes and hours and days and weeks, and we would see things in terms of past, present, and future. And we would see them as sort of separate things, and that they happened at different times, and that was how we viewed time. So funny, actually, hadn't thought about that story in years, and I didn't know I was going to bring it up, but it actually it's a really nice metaphor, because it sort of sums it all up, right? With, if you're seeing time in a linear way, you need a watch. For 5D, you kind of don't need a watch. So yeah, we'll leave it there. So the other couple other things about this 3D piece, it's really a focus on, like we've kind of talked about, the external validation of things and the societal norms. So I talked a little bit about that with my qualification and my parents being able to identify with my job or whatever. But for me, my shift in that was when, and I was an accountant partly to make my parents proud and happy, right? It wasn't a personal choice. I was sort of pushed into it. But so for me, it was a huge shift to be able to walk away from it. And even when my dad says, are you sure you don't want to be the head up that company? And I am saying, absolutely no way. It was really me choosing me and choosing to validate myself and my passion and my soul's purpose over my parents' validation. And I think one of the things that people can be most fearful of is fearing that their parents won't be proud of them. Really, for me, that statement to walk away from that was huge for me. And I'm sure they're still not very impressed because they don't get it. They still don't get what I'm all about, but that doesn't matter. But yes, it was definitely about societal norms fitting in with what everybody did, being a good girl, be just sort of going along with the old ways of doing things. You go to school, you go to university, you meet somebody, you get married, you have 2 kids, you buy a house, you get a mortgage, that kind of thing. So really, to sum that up, it's the seeking happiness through external sources, the money, the status, the relationships, having hot young girlfriend or whatever, that kind of thing, or whatever that looks like. So I think you all know what that world is all about, right? We've all lived it. It is not unfamiliar to us. But the beautiful thing, and the thing that we are shifting into, that is going to take us, whether we like it or not, through some challenges and some changes, is this shift into 5D. So on the other hand, it's basically the complete opposite of 3D, you'll not be shocked about. And it's really all about embracing unity, interconnectedness, really understanding that we are all one, and we're part of the whole, right? We all connected, a bit like in Avatar, right? Like we're all connected to the earth, we're connected to each other, and our energy interconnects, and what you see in someone that you don't like is really just a reflection of something within yourself that is unhealed. For example, we want to be treating each other with kindness. If that's how you want to be treated, you should treat others the same way. So that understanding that if I am not healed, then nobody can be healed, and understanding that I believe that the more we heal, the more the whole world can heal, right? So if I'm not at peace, the world can't be at peace, that kind of thing. So we're all connected. And the beautiful thing is we are going towards a world where it is a place of cooperation, harmony, people working together, and more, if the 3D was the I, this is the we, right? We do it together. We do it as a collection, a collaboration, working with others. And that is the way forward. So obviously, I've just said it's a place of cooperation, harmony, peace. And we are currently experiencing a world, it feels like to me, that there is more war and unsettledness than almost ever before. I know that obviously I haven't lived through world wars and such, but the world feels angry. People on the street feel angry. Everybody is uneasy and unsettled, right? And it seems that so many people are really sadly going into that duality of you are right, I am wrong in the war in the Middle East, right? Like these people are right and these people are wrong, even though people are dying on both sides. So it's just so it's not it's interesting, I suppose interesting, but to see it and to watch it and to see the disharmony. But I believe we've sort of got to go through this time of upheaval, and that is really the upheaval there is almost a reflection of the upheaval that is going on for everyone in everyone's lives, and it's sort of the fight against this new way coming in. It's a sort of like people are resisting and fighting change. They're resisting peace. They're resisting a new place where we can exist as a we and not an I. And so that's part of this, the turmoil that's happening at the moment. And, the more we, like I said, I think before, the more we sort of fight the change, the harder it's going to be for us. The more we resist, we're going to notice the resistance. It's going to show up in our experience, in our world. And so the more that we can be prepared and flexible and sort of go with the changes, the easier it's going to be. But the world is changing and we can't stop it. So I remember years ago sitting in ceremony with a shaman who also does Mayan astrology, really beautiful teacher. And she was talking, this is like 2017, maybe 2017, 18. And she was talking about this structural change and collapse that was coming. And, you're sitting in a nice circle, maybe before or after we did some sort of plant medicine, and we were in this beautiful, like, la la la, we're all peace and love and joy in those circles, and everyone's, friends and connected, and it's lovely. But we were talking about she's like saying the educational system's going to collapse, the government's going to collapse, the royal families are going to collapse, the monetary system's going to collapse. And, in those times, I'm like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Right. You can't really imagine those things happening. Like maybe you've had a heads up, it's coming. But I didn't really fully believe it was possible. Is that not that I didn't believe her, but we've been so entrenched in these ways that how is that possible? And then you have things like COVID happening and all the universities and schools were closed and they're learning at home, and people are starting to homeschool or wondering why they're in uni at all if they're just doing some online learning. And that shift away from the traditional education system happened really quickly, that you would never have imagined, in 2019 or 18 or whenever I first sort of found out about these shifts coming. So, and then, even though Bitcoin existed in 2017, for instance, you would never think that entire countries would take it on as their, as their currency, like El Salvador, right? Who took on Bitcoin as their main currency. So you would never have imagined that even, 7, 8, whatever years ago. These systems are disintegrating. We look at the royal family and there's so much happening there. They're all ill. You got Harry and Meghan leaving and really causing cracks in the sort of fundamentals of the monarchy and things like that. The Queen passing, those kind of shifts are really huge, and I can now see the possibility that the monarchy could be dismantled. But again, 7-8 years ago, living in the UK, you would never imagine that institution would show any signs of cracking or whatever. So it's really palpable, and you can really really see these things happening in real time. So yeah, let's just make sure I've covered a few more bits of this 5D piece to just make sure I talk about. So this cooperation, harmony, and it's really about transcending the ego. I know you get every spiritual person on the internet at some point going, I've had an ego death, I'm like at one with everything, but they're putting it on a TikTok video. So we still have some work to do, people. We might not all transcend our egos in this lifetime, but moving to a place of it doesn't all have to be about me, right? It can be about others, helping, sharing, growing spiritually, finding your inner peace. And I think with change, having an anchor within yourself is one of the most important things. So if the things can be in chaos around you, but deep down you can take a deep breath and know that you're okay and you're still safe within yourself, you can find that anchor, then I think it's going to be one of the most important things we can cultivate within ourselves over the next few years, to allow ourselves to move and transition with a little bit more ease. So it's definitely a place of more, instead of the fear-based things, it's definitely more of a place coming from love and trusting and understanding the power of co-creation with the universe, knowing that you are supported and there is a higher power and there is vibrational energy and all of those kind of pieces to the puzzle. It wasn't until maybe 2015, 2016, where I really started to understand and have a faith when I saw miracles happening, that I call these flow stories, synchronicities, like these sort of miracle moments, that I was like, oh, there is definitely a higher power at work. You know, maybe in the past, a lot of that stuff I could have played off or put down to hard work or chance or whatever. But when I started seeing these miracle moments happening, I was like, oh, this is beyond this. I had nothing to do with that. That really was a God wink. So understanding that and really coming back to a beautiful place of that understanding. And really, again, in this 5D, it's going to be all about authenticity, and that's going to be it's really highly valued, and sort of that individual expression rather than just conforming to the social norms, like really truly, as cliched it is, just being yourself. So and I think within business, within the coaching industry, definitely, it used to be the sort of bro marketing, blah, blah stuff. But people, I believe, are becoming more discerning buyers. Their intuition is more on point. They're sensing things. And they're sort of craving and demanding a more authentic approach, and authenticity from people that we're working with and learning from. And it was an industry evolution within our industry that even allowed that. I think a lot of it came from things like live videos and pieces like that, because when I first started in this industry, there was no such thing as a Facebook Live or Instagram Live. TikTok didn't exist, Reels didn't exist, all of those things. We started first doing live streams on Periscope a million years ago. So things have definitely changed and evolved within the industry as well. So it's really a lot about finding fulfillment, joy, more of a spiritual connection, and we see that with so many people. Again, the pandemic really sort of was a catalyst for so many people to go and start a business making soap or whatever, and it really sparked a whole bunch of change and people questioning, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? Do I need a new job? Do I need to quit my job? What's going on? So it was definitely a bit of a catalyst for that as well. And then the last piece of this puzzle is that time is not linear. So I believe that our past, present, and future are all happening at once. We live in a holographic universe, and multiple lifetimes are happening at the same time. Multiple versions of this life is happening all at the same time. Part of our journey is we talk about collapsing timelines or jumping timelines. And that's where this piece of the puzzle really comes in. It's like there is, I believe, a universe where your best self is thriving. And can we adjust our frequency, like change the dial on the radio to tune in to that new channel? And I quite like that metaphor, actually, thinking about it in a sort of higher way. Like we were on a 3D radio channel, right? We're changing channels into 5D, but when you change channels, what do you get? You get static, you get friction, right? Whatever that sound is, right? And you're like a little bit back. Do I tune it? And then you sort of maybe like you hit it, but you go a little bit too far, and then you have to come back on the dial, right? I just bought a new radio that is solar powered, hand wind up, and you can plug it in. So it's like an emergency radio thing. So just the other day I was like playing with that radio and the status, because so we don't really do that anymore, do we? We have Spotify and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when you change the channels to the radio station, you can go a little bit too far, you come back again, and then you sort of hit that sweet spot and you're like, oh, great, this is my favorite song, let's go. So I feel like that's kind of the shift that's happening, and we're in this static at the moment, and that's what's happening for a lot of us during this time of change. So let's see, is there anything else we want to talk about? But yeah, this time of coming back to the sort of Aquarius piece of it, it's definitely some of the themes associated with that are innovation, humanitarianism. Obviously, we're seeing AI coming whether we like it or not. That's really part of this innovation piece. And hopefully, ultimately, I believe that we are moving into an age, a golden age, where things are more positive, more connected, happier, all of that good stuff. So while it might feel we're in the static at the moment between these two stations on the dial, ultimately I believe we're going to shift into a time where everything is better and works better, and we are connected and more caring and in communication and all of that good stuff. Okay, I think that's all I want to share about that at the moment. I'm not even sure how long I've been talking now. So yeah, we'll leave it there for today. I will talk more about some of these themes and how to navigate them more as we go on. But just having that awareness, I think, is really important. And just before we go, reminder, the retreat is still on early bird pricing for the next week, I believe, up until the 15th, I think. And then it goes up. So if you are interested in joining us at the Celtic Doorway, the beautiful retreat in Scotland, you would be more than welcome. It is a spiritual business retreat for visionary souls happening September 21st to Friday the 27th of September this year for 6 nights. And it's at a beautiful luxury traditional lodge near Loch Ness in Scotland. And we are going to be diving into some of these themes about transformation, transition, change, navigating that death rebirth cycle, diving into all of that stuff, as well as the usual stuff of looking at blocks and limiting beliefs and what's holding you back in your business, and getting you back into alignment during these times of change. And on top of that, we're visiting beautiful sacred sites around Inverness. All of them are Outlander sites, as well as being spiritually significant anyway, in terms of planetary grid work and the connections and things that I've shared around the ley lines and the vortices and these beautiful incarnation lines being open in Scotland to be accessed, to be worked with, to help us transform during this really potent, powerful time. They're open up until 2026. So it's a really beautiful time to come to visit Scotland. We have a very deep connection to the mystical. The veil is thin in many places in Scotland. They're known as fairylands. We're very connected to the mysticism and the magic that happens when the veil is thin between the two worlds. And that's kind of where we're at the moment, right? We're between these two worlds, the 3D to the 5D, this shift. So yeah, it's going to be a combination. We'll be doing things like activations, meditations, workshopy type things, working together in a business mastermind style, and also getting out into the wilds and exploring all that Scotland has to offer. And it's going to be a really beautiful experience. So it's bringing together all of the things we talked about: the connection, the community, the we thinking over the I thinking, and really, really looking forward to spending time with people and introducing you to Scotland. And if you've never been to Scotland before, it's definitely going to be an immersive Scottish experience with beautiful Scottish food. And I've been sort of thinking of all of the different Scottish things we can incorporate. So it's going to be very Scottish, in a good way, not in a cheesy way, but it's going to be really, really beautiful. So if you want more information, then reach out. I'll put the link in the show notes and I will send you over a document. You're welcome to email me at joannaturner24@gmail.com. And as always, if you would like, share, or also leave a review, I would be very, very grateful. That would be wonderful. Thank you so much for being here today. I know some of this topic can be quite heavy, but ultimately, hopefully, it will help us transition through this time of change with more love, ease, and grace. All right. Thank you so much. And I'll see you over the next few weeks with our with a few interviews coming up. All right. Take care. Thanks. Bye, guys.